Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another Gunpla review, and today I'm taking a look at the high-grade Build Divers Re-Rise Gundam Aegis Knight. Of course, this is Kazami's mobile suit from the online series Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise. And of course you know by now, this kit right here was hiding a little bit of a secret. Anyway, as always, if you do want one of these of your own, there is a link down there in the description. You can get yours through Hobby Link Japan with 5% off with that code down there. That is a brand new code, so if you did use the last one, well, you're in luck. You can now use this one. Anyway, on to the review. So that right there is the high-grade Gundam Aegis Knight out of the box, just snapped together with some panel lining. As for the panel liners that I just used the standard Gundam marker fine tip black, that's on the majority of the kit, and the brown on the gold and the red. Once again, as usual, I will be uploading a build of this to my other channel, which is Mecha Builds, so if you want to subscribe and check that out, feel free to do so. So just to start this all off, there it is side by side with Kazami's previous mobile suit, which was the high-grade Justice Knight. So there is a massive difference between these two kits. They feel different, they look different, and in general the plastics are different, so they're not directly kit bashable. So just a bit of a commentary on the plastics between both kits. So the purple that we have on the Aegis Knight is somewhere between the purple we saw on the Justice Knight and the grey. It doesn't really match between the two. The white is essentially the same, the gold is essentially the same, and I find the red is a lot richer on the brand new Aegis Knight. When it comes to the overall colors and textures, the Aegis Knight has raised the game with some pretty cool looking colors. The green on here is a kind of candy lime green I've seen on nothing before. What we saw in the last kit was more of a fluorescent yellowy green, so once again, not the same between the two, and this one really does pop. The Aegis Knight also raises the game by adding some metallic gunmetal to the mix, so when it comes to the look of the plastics on this kit, they really do pop, it does look quite premium, and we've got a lot of shiny plastics. Color accuracy wise, this is pretty much bang on, besides a couple of black stickers. Where they go is inside the chest right there. Number 7 is for on the crotch. I decided to just use a panel lining pen instead. 5 and 6, they are also from the chest. Once again, I just panel lined it instead of using the stickers. And number 1, of course, is for the eyes. The only other 2 stickers are for the cameras on the head. That is number 2 and number 3. And on the whole, these are pretty easy to apply, and black stickers are never really the worst, especially when they're recessed like the ones on here. When it comes to the color, the only thing that I feel is a little bit of a letdown is that gold. It doesn't look like the pictures in the instructions, of course, because that is a painted model, but the injection gold on Bandai's kits a lot of the time does look a little bit on the cheap side, so this may or may not be to your liking, but it could look a whole lot worse, so it's not so bad. I will mention this right now, but I will delve into it a little bit more later on in the build and the articulation, but this definitely isn't the same level of solid kit that we got with the Aegis Knight. There is a couple of loose parts on this kit, mainly the shoulders up top and the very odd little feet. As you can see, the heels are fists, and that brings me to another point. Because this is based on the Aegis, we don't have a decent high-grade Aegis at the moment, so just like we saw with the high-grade Justice Knight, eventually leading to the release of an awesome high-grade Infinite Justice, I expect to see a very, very nice high-grade Aegis Gundam sometime in the future. Anyway, finally there is that full 360-degree spin of the high-grade Aegis Knight, and this has one absolutely beautiful silhouette. All of the lines on this look great. It's got that huge shoulder, narrow waist, flared out side skirting that gives it a cool kind of X shape. Even though this does have a bunch of parts sticking out, including those side skirts which are quite big, they all hold on quite well, and the only issues are up on the shoulders and down at the feet, but once again, easy fixes. The colors look great, the design looks great, and besides the shoulders and feet, this thing is as solid as a rock. Lastly then, onto a couple more size comparisons. There it is beside a standard size Gundam, which is the RX 78-2. There it is side by side with the Core Gundam, which is a small Gundam, and finally there it is side by side with the real grade New Gundam. So now moving on into the accessories, and here's the high-grade Aegis Knight with absolutely everything that it comes with, and this is a box that packs in quite a bit. So as well as the Aegis Knight itself, we've got a full stand in clear, the Aegis Shield, Raite Shot Lancer Kai, a whole bunch of effect parts as well as some adapters, one for attaching it to an action base, and a bunch for doing something else. So as for hands, the Aegis Knight does not come with any options, we've just got the standard set of holding hands. As for weapons, first up we've got the Raite Shot Lancer Kai, so this is a variant of the Raite Shot Lancer we would have seen before. That would be this one right here. And the only difference this time around is this end and the color. Besides that, it's pretty much what we've seen before. Well, not once before, but twice before if you take the option set 1 into consideration. Just like before, this can be held either by the shaft section for those thrusting attacks, or by that handle underneath for those mid-range shooting attacks. Next up in here, we've got that Aegis shield. This is pretty much the exact same shield as we saw before with the Justice Knight. Take that off. I forgot to mention that earlier on. We've got a sword back here. But yeah, this is pretty much the exact same shield we saw before with this Aegis-looking shield segment on front with these side parts, but otherwise what we saw before. So that means we have this removable adapter up top and this tucked away handle down here, which can pop in any of these holes like so to be held in those holding hands. Using that little adapter up top, we can pop this into this side of the arm just like so, and you can attach that into the hand if you want to using the lower handle, but you don't need to. It can just attach on securely like that. Next up then in here, we've got the Levatine Beam Rapier. So this is just a hilt of a sword, and by taking one of those beam effects, that can just slot in like so for your beam rapier. This can then be held in the hand just as simply as that, and that's what it looks like attached into that hand. I will mention though that these particular effect parts have a very small attachment point. From the looks of things, this is 1mm or less, so this is very inclined to break if you are not careful. So you can take each and every one of the weapons we've seen so far. That's the lance, shield, sword, heck, you even take the side-skirting armor of the Aegis Knight itself, combine that all together to get the Karanos Heavy Beam Sword. Using those beam effect parts, we can pop them in like this. I will recommend caution while handling these. These are very soft plastic, very small connection parts, and they're very grippy to boot, so attaching them can be a little bit difficult, so be careful while doing so. This is what it looks like once completed. It is pretty cool, but that's a very piddly blade up top for something made out of so many parts. It's pretty cool, but I would have liked to have seen a bigger effect part popping out the top. Once again, there's that full 360-degree spin, this time in King mode. And with that sword, the extra effect part in the chest, that crown section from behind flipped up, that gives this kit a whole lot more volume and a whole lot more presence. And that reminds me, I've totally forgotten in these videos recently to put the shelf presence test in, especially because I cleaned up all my shelves. So there it is up on the shelf, and I will mention, as usual, this is mainly master grade kits, so this is a high grade, so it will look smaller in comparison, but for a high grade, this thing is going to stand out quite well in that collection. So just to mention at this point, I did just hit this with some Mr. Super Clear Flat, just to give it that awesome look and to tighten up the annoying little ankles and shoulder bits for the articulation. Anyway, there's a full 360-degree spin of what it looks like with that matte top coat on, side by side with what it looks like without the matte top coat, just so you can know what it looks like before, what it looks like after, and if you want to do the same sort of thing to any of your gunpla. It always gives them that kind of premium, mattified, almost painted kind of look. I love this. But either way, like I mentioned before out of the box, the build of the core of this kit is solid as a rock. We just have some issues down here in the ankles because of the particular design of this here. As you can see, the seam runs across there, exactly where the pressure would be put on the ball joint. So you're going to want to glue this together. I haven't, just for the sake of this review, but you're going to want to glue this together, make sure it's held tight with either some kind of little vise or your fingers, wait for it to dry, and then put it together. Otherwise, that's always going to be annoyance attached to the ankle or down here with this little fist. So glue that seam. The ball joints for the shoulders up here as well are notorious for falling off. So I'm gonna take a look at those first, then take them off, and then go through all of the articulation. So with these, they're a ball joint up top, so it allows you to move them around in any way that you like. And around back then, we've got a peg attaching into the backpack, which allows them to flip back like so. So as you can see in here, we have a bit of a sliding and rotating mechanism as well, which allows this to do a whole lot. But in general, when it comes to joints, the more range of motion something has, the more delicate they tend to be. So that's why it tends to pop off a lot. Besides that, we've got some flaps that move up and down. I assume they've got something to do with the transformation we'll be seeing later on. But as for this kit's general stability, I put that down to the fact that this is another absolutely polycapless build, so it's all plastic on plastic joints. We've got some great ball joints up here in the shoulders, which it inherited from this right here because it does share some of the same inner frame sections, so those are an awesome shoulder design. Anyway, as usual, from the head down, On top of the head, that big old crest-type crown has a flip-up and sliding forward mechanism as part of the transformation to King Mode. The neck is double jointed. Once again, this is not a polycap, a plastic neck here. We've got a ball joint up top, which does what a ball joint does, and we've got a bit of a hinge down below, which gives us an incredible giggity 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 goo. So this is a pretty sweet neck right here. Just like the high-grade Justice Knight before it, this has an incredibly impressive shoulder joint. We have a whole lot going on inside the torso, which allows us to bring the whole arm forward like so. It can rotate down and up also inside of the torso. We've got a slightly moving hinge up there inside of the shoulder, and on top of that we have a ball joint in there as well. So there's a whole lot of range of motion up on the shoulders on this thing. This is an incredibly impressive joint and one of the best shoulders I've ever seen in a high-grade kit. Ridiculously impressive. As for the rest of the arm, this is all incredible. We've got full rotation at the upper arm. We've got a 2-point bend at the elbow, giving us an awesome robo bicep flex. And as for that wrist, this is your typical ball joint, and that does exactly what a ball joint does. That kind of cockpit looking section around in the back, that can swing up with a simple hinge. I do find when you move this all the way up and all the way back again, it can pop out. But if you're mindful, this will be no issue whatsoever. As for the ab crunch here, it's okay, not great. It is tight, which is a good thing, but it doesn't have the biggest range of motion. As for the side to side, this is impressive. This is a bit of a 2-joint motion. There's some inside the torso and an awesome rocking mechanism in the hips. This is something it has inherited once again from the high-grade Justice Knight. You can see it all moving inside of the hips, and this is an incredibly intricate little design. Also, very, very solid. The front skirting armor is your typical set of ball joints. They are attached on the runner, but I snipped them apart to give them independent movement. As for those big gleaming red side skirts, these are incredible again. We've got a pair of hinges, one up at the waist itself, the other in the side skirt unit. On top of that, we've got rotation at this peg right here, which gives you a lot of range of motion, and unlike some other kits like Iron-Blooded Orphans high grades, this is not loose at all. It is long, which means law of the lever will tend to make them likely to pop off, but not in this case because it's so well designed. Solid as a rock again. The kicks we get out of this, up to the front it's about parallel to the ground. Out to the back it is blocked a little bit by that paralyzed butt flap, but you can disconnect that if you want a little bit more. And as for out to the sides, it can kick them out well beyond parallel to the ground, which means this will have no problem whatsoever pulling off the splits. At the upper thigh we do not have full rotation here, we just have a little bit. This is a slight bit of a disappointment, of course, but I'm sure you'll still get some nice poses out of it. Next up, down at the knee, we've got an absolutely fantastic 2-point bend. Actually, that's ridiculously good. Of course, we're not going to get that full range of motion when it's attached to the mobile suit, but this right here is nothing to sniff at. That is impressive. The ankle armor can pivot ever so slightly, not a whole lot. As for the ankle joint, that is just a ball joint. This is what we get out of that. The toes can bend down as part of the transformation. That looks cool, but we do have no upwards bend. The heel fist right here is on a ball joint, so it can move around. And yes, I did say heel fist. And finally, as for that functional movement on the ground, it's okay to the front, not great to the back, and not great side to side. So in general, the ankle joint is the one with the weakest range of motion. So as for the articulation as a whole, it is very impressive, but it is limited at a couple of critical joints. That of course would be the ankles. The forward kick of the leg could be a bit better, and so could the forward ab crunch. But on the whole, it is quite impressive. So next, moving on to the transformations, and as usual, I filmed my first ever time trying this just to get the gist of how easy or difficult the transformation is. With this, it's a pretty straightforward transformation, at least the first one. There are 3 with this kit, and only 2 of them we're going to look at in this particular video. But the first one is the high-speed cruising mode. So this is something very similar to what we would have seen so many times with other Gundams. It's a simple style transformation like what you'd see with Gundam Wing or Gundam Kyrios. On the whole, it does look okay, not great. It's one of those ones that from the underside looks very, very, very humorous, as it's just a Gundam on its back with its head turned around and something over its face. However, it does look somewhat aerodynamic and looks like it would work out. But anyway, onto transformation, the second. So now moving on to the second transformation, which is the Assault Combat Mode, which is that Aegis beam squid kind of thing. So once again, this is my first time doing this, and in general, it is quite simple. There isn't any real detailed transforming gimmicks in here per se. There's no parts formation, so that's great. You can just do it all seamlessly, and the final step then is to add those beam effects. In the end, it looks okay, pretty cool, but I don't get why the head is turned around the way that it is. I assume having the cameras pointing forward would be more beneficial than having the head turned around. And when you look at it from the back, it kind of looks like the Gundam is flying forward so fast that its arms and legs are kind of flapping and flailing behind it from the speed. It just looks a little bit on the daft side. From the front, good. From this angle, not so good. But anyway, that right there is it for the review, and this is one feature-packed kit built on top of an incredibly solid core. So to me, the high-grade Aegis Knight is gold tier. And it gives me a lot of hope for what we're going to see from the high-grade Aegis. Even though this right here isn't particularly a pure Aegis per se, it seems to be a bit of a mashup of different mobile suits. So if you want yourself a kit that comes with a whole lot in the box, really at its core is super solid besides a couple of easy fix loose parts like the shoulders and ankles, something that has great articulation and maybe a little bit limited in places, but on the whole is great, then this is one that you want. I really do love this kit. It packs in 2 transformations in the box, it's got a lot of weapons, beam effects, all in the box, and we do have a couple of adapters in here for doing something else. So as for the high-grade Re-Rising Gundam, I'm going to do a video about that itself, reviewing it as if it was a standalone kit. I will mention the kits you need to make it, what the whole process of making it is like, and how it stands as a gunpla on its own. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time. Once again, I cannot finish this video right here without thanking each and every one of you guys. Whether you just watch my videos, like them, or support the channel on the channel memberships and over on Patreon. Like Craig Jury, Greg Humphrey, Kaiser721, Tyler Sanders, Caleb Engelhardt, Sean T, and the ambassador for asymmetric cats.